Hey guys, and today we're going to be doing a video on Silver. Silver's an interesting character since he isn't exactly the girl next door or the boy next door rival sort of stick that we've seen quite a bit in Pokemon games. He's actually his own thing in a way, not reciting around the fact that he is related to Giovanni as his trueborn son, but with the fact that he actually goes through a bit of a character arc. For those of you who don't know, in literature, it's often the characters that do nothing, yet nothing is undone by them. So, for example, Hercules, where he does the 12 labours, and even when he is robbed of two of those labours, he just goes with the flow. He chooses a path of least resistance. Now, this is a very important trait when it comes to the pure of heart characters. This is a point of contention when it comes to writing something in a degree that is considered the minimum. And what I mean by the minimum is it represents essentially someone having no clue what to do and using their environment, using what they're given, what the story can provide to create a resolution that isn't haphazard, so it isn't easily resolved, essentially, with a Deus Ex Machina, which is, in literature terms, essentially, well, we just solve the story by bringing in this god mode character, or this other character got a power up for no reason, or the heavens above have opened up and saved our characters, which doesn't show up in Silver's story. And it's interesting that a pure of heart character needs to be genuine, that it needs, being pure of heart needs to not come from within, but come from being genuine about what is around you, which drives it back home that Silver's Sync Pair story references this quite a bit, and that's why Ho-Oh wants to approach it, because it sees that, well, yeah, Silver, he's essentially as natural as the season. He is going with that flow. Another aspect of the minimum that is proved through Silver's actions is his choice to steal one Pokemon for a lifetime. What I mean by this is in Gold, Silver, Crystal, Heart Gold, Soul Silver, he steals one thing in the games, and that is a Pokemon. And that Pokemon, as we know, can provide money, it can provide company. It's essentially stealing the most littlest thing you can for the biggest return. And that's also another point of a pure of heart character. It's not being obsessive. Being excessive as a pure of heart character is, well, not exactly a good way to start off. This genuine quality to Silver is what creates fluidity, and pure irony is what Silver can represent. It's the polarization between what is good and what is evil. And as I said before, the choice to be excessive or pure of heart. Now, Silver also represents the wavelength. What I mean by wavelength is, in comparison to Ethan, he's essentially the waterfall that's being observed in constant motion. He isn't compelled to just watch a phenomena go on around him. He wants to set off on his journey. He wants to escape that pond, escape that rocky outcrop, and flow onwards. Now, even though his emotions and feelings are tangible, they're rhythmic, and they are predictable, the frequency in which he operates with those feelings, those emotions within and around the world, it's not. Doesn't necessarily, he doesn't really reflect the beauty of the beach side or the water side. He represents the energy throughout nature that's transferred throughout, across, and not so much the distribution or the scale of the energy, rather the direction that it is going in, which is very important. He is there to restore the equilibrium. In the story between Pokemon and humans, there is a sense of almost terror in the story that Team Rocket's returning and they're using Pokemon to create havoc. And that's not what Pokemon are meant to represent. They're meant to represent the exploration of ourselves and the world around us. So at first in the story he does judge his Pokemon based on their strength, but he later does understand the bonds between human and Pokemon. His motion from then on out, it's progressive. It returns to the norm, the original position. And he begins to understand the balance of the disturbance level and the phase of opposition and the wavelengths between humans, Pokemon, and the story itself. This is important to the reaction and the action that makes the story flow, that makes the story interesting. It's a dichotomy between, is something evil because it's going to stay evil forever, or is something evil because it chooses to be evil and therefore reflects on that evil solely and has no reflection that renders it in any way capable of becoming good. And for a pure of heart character, you need that sensibility that this character could one day essentially change the way that it shows its spots. A leopard is never going to change its spots, but it's going to change the way it shows its spots. And this goes back to another aspect of, say, the Slytherin house in Harry Potter, in which Merlin, the famous and kind-hearted wizard from our mythology, is actually in the Slytherin house. Now, how is that possible? That's for shrewd, crafty, bad people. But it's not necessarily bad, per se. It's all a matter of contention. It's all a matter of feeling rather than thinking, appropriating what is against what isn't, in the fact that what can be should be. Lastly, a Silver needs to exist within a vacuum. He's an embodiment of the fact that duality in time doesn't exist. It's a triad. It's a past, it's a present, it's a future. And the fact that we live in this present and that the future is just conjecture means that his actions are derived from the different point of his past. He's essentially a sword where he's a blade that meets a stone grit, an impossible force meets an immovable one. The less finer he is, the less measurable he is. Which is just poor, because his edge, his character dynamic correlates to the fact that he knows that what is most easy to do isn't necessarily the most intelligent, the most genuine, the most pure of heart, really. He's smart in the fact that he knows there's time to cast away a stone, and he knows there is a time to gather those stones. valuing judgment not as a factor of rather why something should be good or how something should be good, but the appropriation of when it should be good and how it should be good. And that is a process of growth. That is a necessary element of a pure of heart character. Additionally, my thoughts on Silva are he's an example of the indifference between the protagonist and the antagonist, and why it is important to view the two on the same scales. We often see the antagonist and the protagonist, and we often root for the protagonist. But we need to understand that some of these protagonists might essentially be manipulated by flat character aspects and story aspects. And what I mean by that is the story influencing them rather than them influencing story. With Silva, it is important to recognize that he's a character born out of conflict that can control the conflict for the good of others. And those are my closing thoughts on Silva. Thank you for viewing this video, and hope to bring you guys more. See ya!